There are a lot of seats up front. When we just did the dry run half an hour ago, we realized that the font is actually quite small. So for those of you in the back, if you want to come up, there are a lot of seats in front, please. Can everyone hear me in the back? We're running a little bit behind, and David gave me specific instructions not to go in 3 hours. So grab your coffee, your Adderall, your Red Bull. But I want to make the cocktail hour, so don't want to stand before you in the bar. Okay. No.
I can't hear you.
Yo, Sanjay, hear me in the back? Beautiful.
Okay. Alright. Everybody in the back? Excellent. Alright, let's start. I know we're running a little behind, so I'm going to try to catch up. Welcome. This is a very brief history of Guyana squash, the last 60 years. A lot to cover in 60 years, so we'll go straight into it. We're being assisted by my lovely assistant, Marjorie de McCaw, the voted mascot for the event. Marjorie, say hi. Okay.
Hello.
There you go. Right. Okay. Newton's quote, we all stand on the shoulder giants. This is going to be a constant theme I'll refer to throughout the evening, actually probably throughout the weekend. Point being is that we're all here because of the generation before us, and they're here because of the generation before them. So I'll keep coming back to this, and it's a constant theme throughout the presentation. Right, what are we going to cover tonight? Well, we're here to celebrate 60 years of Guyana squash. So I want to talk a little bit about our accomplishments the last 60 years. Touch a little bit on the background of squash, both the Georgetown club and squash here. It starts with the Georgetown club. And then I want to talk a little bit about how squash has evolved in Guyana and the Caribbean in not only a national but a regional context. I think the most interesting part is we broke down the history of the last 60 years into 5 phases or 5 eras. Be interesting to hear if you guys, what you guys think about that. And if we have time, we can wrap up with some quick takeaways, conclusion, and if there's time for questions and answers, we'll go straight there. Right. What are we celebrating? These are senior casting results and how the seniors have done over the years. The green is Guyana, yellow is Jamaica, everybody else purple. You can see men's, women's overall. Statistical average, we should be around 12-14%. We hit the cover off the ball across all categories. We're the #1 team in the men's. We float behind Jamaica in both the women's and the overall, but that's a little bit misleading. If you go to the detail, you'll notice that we actually, in the recent years, we dominate significantly. 7 of the last 9 years, we've been overall champions. Jamaica really has won in the early years. They haven't really been a presence. So Guyana is really taking over dominance at the senior level in PASA. The junior level, even more impressive. If you take a look at the boys, girls, and overall, we dominate by 4 times our statistical average at 50%, and it goes all the way through to overall, where we're very dominant at 63%. Detail to that, a lot to do with everyone would have heard the 12-year winning streak on the Carl Ince. That's on the right. Where is this? Over here. 12 years of dominance. And then I'll get back to that in a later slide, that 84 team. Okay, right. Where else have we significantly outperformed? We've outperformed very much at sports. These are sports men of the year. Over 65 years of data. Mr. Walker was very kind to help us with that. Where did we lag? On the men's side, we lag behind cricket, and you can expect that, especially given the history of cricket in this country. But for squash to have 3 sportsmen over 65 years is to me, a very incredible feat. I tried to kind of do an analysis of how we perform from a national level versus using viewership of the sport as a proxy for where we should come out. Those numbers I couldn't find, but on a global basis, cricket actually is viewed by 32% of the population, boxing 24%, athletics 23%, and squash less than 1%, 0.3%. Using those as proxies, we hit the cover of the ball across every statistical category. On the women's side, we're even more dominant. We're the second most accomplished sport in Guyana over 65 years. Tremendous accomplishment. We should be, which represents, by the way, 15% of all sportswomen awards over that time period. Statistically, we should be at 0.3. Goes to show you the gap of how we've accomplished versus where our statistical average or expected probability should be. Those are the winners. We'll get back to some of those. Tomorrow we're honoring 2 of those four ladies who will be there tomorrow night. Right. And lastly, one of our greatest accomplishments, of course, Nicolette, is really taking us to a whole new level. That's the point I found. And Marjorie, how am I looking there? Oh, she good. Right. Next. Okay, a little bit of background. Why are we here? GSAP is the Guyana Squash Archival Project. There are 5 individuals, 9 vintage, nothing else better to do with their time. So for the last 3 years, we've all put together, painstakingly so, this archival project, essentially bringing together the history of Guyana squash from 65 to the present. Actually, our mandate is 65 to 2000, detail. These are the individuals involved. You may or may not know them. The reason I have their faces up is because, that's actually the real Diane, but we used to call her Lady Diane, kind of a temporal reference, is the following. We're still in the early stages of gathering information, and this is what ideally we would like to achieve. We still haven't gotten all the names of Guyana squash players throughout the eras. To the extent to which you guys know these names, please bring them forward. In the yellow box, you'll see how to contact us. Please provide any information you have here. We want names, classes, i.e. we want to put every name in a class. So I'm class of 82. I started with Jillian Griffith, Garfield Wilshire. We want everyone in this room who's played, we want to assign them to class. We're looking to see how many international caps, how many times you represented Guyana, tournament results, even the records that we've lost over the years, secretaries and presidents of the association. They did all the hard work. We think it's important to recognize them. We'd love to have a board with them, listing their names and their accomplishments. It goes on. You can read that, please. Actually, can you see that from the back? Okay. So the reason I put the pictures of GSAP up, to the extent in which you see us over the weekend and you can provide some of this information, please do. Or you can email it to us or other. Right. History of squash in Guyana will always start with a Georgetown club. This is where it all started. And we went into the archives to kind of find out a little bit more of the Georgetown club's history before we even get to squash. Georgetown Club was founded actually in 1858. The original site was in the assembly rooms, which is the current site of the Bank of Guyana building. And it was the assembly rooms at that time was basically kind of a town hall, a meeting room of some of the aristocracy that was the plantocracy, I should say. The bureaucrats. It was a meeting room for both private and public servants. And the Georgetown Club was a private club within the assembly room building. It was a gorgeous building, as you can see. That's an artist's rendition. We'll fly through some of these very quickly. These are pictures throughout the years. that's the one on the left is actually one of the better shots to see. You guys should appreciate this. This is Main Street looking down towards what would be now Bank of Guyana building. So the assembly room is at the end of that street. They're on the left. Artist rendition on the right. Post 1920. I like this picture a lot as well because you can see assembly room on the left. That's the old Particle building in the middle, which is now Guyana stores. I think it's Guyana stores now. On the right is the public library, what is now the public library, and next door to that is the Tower Hotel. Right. Couple other pictures to look at. Beautiful architecture at the time, still is. Sad loss for us. Okay. February 23rd, 1945, the Great Fire of Georgetown at the time. It started in the Booker's building, and then it migrated across all the buildings to engulf and take out the entire assembly room and what was the Georgetown Club at the time. Sad loss to the club. By the way, the Georgetown Club at the time was one of 3 private clubs. The British Guyana Club was formed in 1871, and the Demerara Club was formed in 1880. None of those 2 clubs exist now. The Georgetown Club is the only one that has remained. Right, moving on. It was rebuilt to its current location where we are gathered here tonight, and these are just some pics of the more of what you guys will all be familiar with. Okay. Okay. Right. We went from Newton. We're going to Maya Angelou. Knowing your past is important to know where you're going. Okay. Again, this constant theme I'll be addressing over through the presentation. Okay, where did we come from? Story time. I don't know if anyone knows the great Ian McDonald. I hope you do. He apologizes because he is not here. Okay. Sorry, I needed to address my notes. For those who do not know who Ian McDonald is, Ian McDonald was responsible for having the first squash court here, which is court 1 at the Georgetown Club. And I'll get to that story in a minute. But Ian, I want to spend 30 seconds on Ian. He's a legend, and I think it's important that we recognize him. He was sportsman. He was originally a tennis player. He was sportsman of the year in 1957. He was a runner-up. He never won the Guyana Nationals, but he was runner-up. He was captain of West Indies Davis team. He was an exceedingly great tennis player. He played Wimbledon 4 times, 4 years. 1 year he got past the first round. And he even got as far as the Queen's Club tournament, which is the tournament that precedes the warm-up for Wimbledon. He made it to the quarterfinals where he played and lost to Ken Rosewall of Australian tennis fame. The guy is an absolute legend in tennis. I hope the Tennis Association recognizes him appropriately. But we in the sports fraternity would love to pay homage to him based on everything he's given us. And I'll tell you what he's given us. So it was back in 1963 or so, and this is a true story. He was working for what was then, the old guy, Super, which was Reddy Booker, and he was the CMO, I think. He was, he'd come back, he was worked his way up Guy Succo, and the CEO at the time was a guy called Edgar Redwin, British guy, great rackets player. He was great across all sports. He was actually quite good in tennis. Ian was a legend in tennis, and they played very often, and you could never beat Ian McDonald. And Ian did this. The one thing you should never do is always beat your boss. Ian kept beating him, and Redmond was very upset that he kept losing to this guy who was his junior in a way. And he told Ian, he's like, I don't understand why you're basically not letting me get a win. And Ian said, took a lot of courage, and he says, listen, I know you're my boss, but you will never beat me in tennis. All right, Edgar's CEO, they don't get to that role, for nothing. Edgar goes to the bosses back in London of Booker's and convinces them that the executive body or the senior leadership of Booker's in Guyana were getting complacent and putting on weight and needed some form of exercise that would be conducive to increased work productivity. So he convinced Booker's to put in the budget money to build a squash court because he knew Ian McDonald did not play squash and as a great rackets player from the UK, he felt he had the best chance. Fast forward, Booker's approves the budget. He approaches Georgetown Club for the real estate. Georgetown Club said, great, you want to put up for free? Oh, sorry, you're going to pay for it? Absolutely. So they put the court up. They had an opening. First match, they played first ever squash match in Guyana was on court 1 between Edgar Redwin and Ian McDonald. Scoreline 9-0, 9-0, 9-0. Now, Ian was supposed to be here tonight. I've spoken to him multiple times over the last 6 months. He actually promised me he'd be here. Unfortunately, health issues are preventing him. He's still in Canada. And I don't know if Jamie is here, but I wanted to commemorate his contribution to us as a squash family, and the whole raison d'etre of us all being here is due to Ian McDonald. And Jamie, if you're here, Jamie, Angelique, no? All right. This is for Ian. Sorry. This is Edgar Redwood. We got pictures of him. With thanks to Mr. Walker there. That's the best pictures we could get of him. That was in, what's that, 57, 66. Again, remember he was a tennis player, but couldn't.
Which one is he pointing?
Sorry, he's on the left. He is on the left here. That's him 66, and that's him again there. That's Redwood. Okay? Alright, moving on. Okay, sorry, and that was a big thank you to Ian. And by the way, he did send his regrets. I spoke to Mary a couple of days ago. Okay. Moving on to a bit of the timeline and background in the Caribbean. This is just a quick picture to show when squash first came to the other Caribbean islands. Not much really to see here, and but thought it would be interesting at least. Next, okay, this is in Guyana. This is the evolution of squash course built in Guyana over time. Can you guys see that from the back? Can you read that? Okay. That's a win for me. That's okay. One disclaimer, FYI. I should have said it in the GSAT background. History is not necessarily science. It's a lot more of an art. These are triangulation points of not only hard data we could find, but people's recollection, references. Again, triangulation points of various bits of information. So if we do get anything wrong, apologize in advance. If you do have better information, again, please approach us and help us correct it. We want to make history to be as accurate as possible. Okay, that's the evolution there. I try to cut the dates in a different way. This is the cumulative effect of the course over time. Nothing much apart from, I was surprised to see a 13-year gap in course not being built in this time period. This time period here. Okay, moving on. Right, this is the most text-heavy side. Don't feel a need to read all of it for those who can read it. But I wanted to capture the major milestones of squash over time. What I thought the major ones were, I'm sure we left out a bunch. Again, please feel free to tell me what are the big errors we have. But I do want to point out two or three points off this slide. The oh, that's right. That's why I have this, right? Okay, so these colored lines here are the ones I'm going to highlight. The first one I think is the red. The red here is references to the squash marathons that started in '78 between the great Ian McDonald and Dennis Dias, who is hopefully here. Is Dennis here? Okay. Oh, excellent. Thank you both for being here. I don't know why this has kind of died out, but this was a very important part of our history back in the 70s and early 80s. There were 4 marathons, 7.5 hours, 12, 24, and 30. And they played all of them, and I still think they hold the Caribbean marathon record today. I hope this is a challenge. I'll throw the gauntlet down to the new generation, the juniors and the seniors. to try to break that record. I think it's a wonderful effort and a wonderful opportunity to show endurance, love, camaraderie for the sport, which we all share. The next is two tournaments I want to point out. Is the Rose Bowl, which was another tournament between Cayman, Jamaica, Bahamas, and Bermuda, which was held every year from I can't see that 66 to I think 98. This was only held as a team tournament every year between those four tournaments, and the stories are legendary coming out to those tournaments, and it's just a shame that unfortunately came to an end. Equally in the Southern Caribbean, which were the southern countries, it started in 78 and ended in 08. That's the yellow here. Again, a wonderful run of competitive squash that really kept that southern region together. And again, legendary stories, and unfortunate that they haven't continued. In part, they were replaced by CASA, which is every year. And then one last point on this slide. If you, again, for those who can read it, and don't feel the need to read the whole thing, you can see over time the local, regional, and international evolution of the game with time. Perhaps not surprising, but I thought there were good and interesting milestones to know, bear in mind, and see how we step out. And we'll get to that more when we get to the different phases. Right. This is just touching on old tournaments that were played in the region. Those countries, you can kind of read them. They hosted these tournaments. These tournaments no longer occur, but they're an important part of our history. Why? Because in the time period in which these tournaments were held, these were the tournaments that generation cut their teeth on. The Garfield Wilshires, the Colin Brackets, the Dan Lees, even the Mike Watkinsons, they went to these tournaments and did fantastically well. Rose Bowl, Rose Bowl, which is up here, those are those four countries, Southern Caribbean, they had more countries here. And then the important tournaments, which no longer happen because of these tournaments not continuing anymore, is North versus South, which brought camaraderie of the southern countries here playing the northern countries. And Josephine Whitehead, who's right here, she was the first winner in 1980 of the North-South individual tournament. Right, now we come to what I hope is the most interesting part of the presentation, which is the history broken down by what we believe are the right phases. First of all, these are all set in a historical context. So it's important to understand not only these phases as we outline here, but the importance of these phases within that macro context, whether it be the global context or whether it be a national, either macroeconomic, political, or other context. There's a British period here. The reason I point this out is because so 66 was independence, so it kind of coincided nicely with how the evolution of the sport happened. It was a very British time. We'll get to that. There's a story behind the Chinese connection here, and then the Canadian invasion. We'll touch on that. That's really my era, I guess. Carl Ince years. Carl could probably come and give a sermon on that, and then we'll touch a little bit on the future going forward. We'll spend all the time constraints and all that. We'll spend most of our time on the first three. Carl's period is what I would call more contemporary. In many ways, most of you in this room are doing even better than me or GSAP. So, and this is the history, so we'll go there. I do believe, and I hope the association has this event again in a few years' time, and we could dedicate an entire presentation just to Carl's years. So, something to bear in mind. Right. These are periods broken down by time. I just give you a sense of the time frame for each epoch. If we have time to touch on what happened here in the Q&A, we will. But again, all the time, we'll just move on. Right. Okay. First phase the British era. All right. This is a 10-year period. 66, 65. Court goes up. 66. Independence. There's still the legacy of colonialism. The British are still very much a part of the society, the fabric here in Guyana. as you would expect. So a lot of the club at the time, this was an expat club, a British club. So naturally, their presence, their culture, everything was embedded in the fabric of the Georgetown club. So not unexpectedly, that was a large part of. Sure, I can't see that. Okay. As you'd expect, associated with that was a certain level of exclusivity and formality. I remember even when I was a little boy, you were not allowed upstairs at the club. And once I made the darn mistake of going up the back step at the time, going up to the club and being yelled at by the bartenders because kids were not allowed in the bar. Further, kids were not even allowed in the club at all. I think in E and the first wave of players will attest to that. Right, what do I do? Got it. Okay, so remember at the time there was one court. The first court was built in 65. The second court was built in 78. So the Georgetown Club for that period, that 10-year period, what I call the very British affair, was primarily one court dominated by expat, and it had a very ephemeral feeling to it. Expats are here by definition for a short period of time, so there's no sustainability, longevity, or anything along those lines. And then the last one is unstructured. One court, the reason it was built was basically for social play, exercise. There was no structure. There wasn't any formality to the play. It was very much kind of just shifting it around. A little bit like the Beck's court that Robin has put up. And it'd be interesting to watch that as that develops over time, whether it becomes a good comp or parallel or develops in a similar way that Georgetown Club did so many years ago. Right. Right. Okay. These are the people we were able to research for that era. As you can see, it's very thin. We'd love to get more information. You see the yellow box, please. But by no means is definitive. And if you have names, please tell us, especially if they're still around. We'd love to be in touch with them and get more information. Back to that slide we were talking about. This is just a cartoon depiction of the great Madhu Walekar, of the people of his era. But Madhu was a part of this generation. Right. Okay. The men's national title first started in 1971. It was called the Viking Cup. And these are pictures of the Viking Cup. And the reason it was called the Viking Cup was there was East Anglia Regiment, which was think of it as a peacekeeping force from the UK that was here to kind of quell civil unrest, civil disobedience, kind of a peacekeeping force. The 700 men battalion brought in by the British, they came in 62, I believe, but they donated this cup. And the reason it's called the Viking Cup is for the Brits in the room, Norfolk and stuff had a huge Nordic influence. Hence, it was nicknamed Viking. It was actually called the Vikings, and then when they donated the cup, they called it the Viking Cup. Fast forward, that Viking Cup became effectively the first national championship for the men. The women didn't really start until late in that decade, and I'll touch on that when we get to the national championship awards. Right. This is another thing I'll come back to. I'm going to skip it now for expediency, but I wanted to I'll just introduce it quickly, the concept of under the mango tree, which, not sure if it was there in 65, but a large part of why we're here is the cohesion of the social culture that we kind of built up over time. Again, I'll come back to that. But it started back in those days, even the stories I hear. Again, Robin Lowe and what he has there is probably the comp to think about how that social cohesion and glue kept everything together. Right. Moving on to the Chinese connection. Story time here. Now, this is by no means just the Chinese, but I thought it would be a useful proxy to kind of describe what was happening there. Second era, 1975. We're in the middle of, again, macro context, historical context is important. Independence, 10 years later, economic numbers are going in the wrong direction. There were four gentlemen that played at Cosmos, badminton at Cosmos, which is now the Guyana Motor Racing Club, and they couldn't get shuttlecocks anymore. They couldn't find them. They weren't importing them. They needed a new sport. These four gentlemen decamped from Cosmos and came over to the Georgetown Club at the time, which again was primarily British expats. And they were the first wave of a local influence of the squash, and which has kind of led to where we are today. In 1975 is when they came over, and they brought with them at the time the next generation. Now, Richard and Bruce, sons of Bud, Uncle Bud, everybody knows Uncle Bud, and then Godfrey, sons, eldest sons are Gary and Brian. They came over in 1975. They were the first, all the juniors in the room, or even if you're not a junior. These were the first juniors, 1975, that came over. They are why we are here today. So these four guys started that junior program, may be the wrong word because it evolved over time, and Manu Wenekar, we'll get to him tomorrow night, would really coach these guys. But effectively, we have multiple national champions here in 1, 2, 3. The first three, we lost Brian Chin. Brian Chin, when he started with us, he came to hockey and another interest. But he was a part of that formative group. Joined about 6 months later by Indira Wellinkar, who is Maru's daughter, and I think she's here in the room right now, as well as Luana Chochinam. A shout out to her. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here. But these guys were the bedrock of the junior program that exists today, and they're a large part of the reason why we're here. Again, Richard, two-time national champion, incredible player of his time. Bruce, everyone said the most talented person in his family. Well, you guys don't agree? Gary, let me tell you a little bit about this guy. A lot of you don't know him. He was the man. He won the first 2 junior titles in 79 and 81. There was nothing else for him to win. I mean, tears of Alexander, because he aged out and then he actually moved. But now you guys may know his younger brother Richard, and you think he's good, but I mean, Gary was the man. And you gotta give Gary his props. And it's interesting because I travel the world in the last 20 years. I go to every country I go to, I say squash and Guyana in the same sentence. They say, oh, you must know Richard Chin. So he's ubiquitous all over the place. And they all say, oh, Richard Chin is so good. He's such a nice guy. We love Richard. Richard is the best. And I'm like, what are these people talking about? Richard isn't even the best in his own family. Gary is the man. I mean, this guy is rock solid. For those of you who never saw him play, you're missing a big treat. Right. Okay, Chinese connection. One of the, again, what I was trying to do was to highlight some factors or themes or characteristics that define that era. So, for this period, the first one is localization. This was the first generation in 75 of locals that kind of came into play. Remember, the British era was very much characterized by a fleeting presence of expats rotating in and out. And obviously, eventually they left, they all went back. Well, sorry, most of them. But localization was the first theme of this era, and I introduced it with the Chinese connection. Okay, and this theme, again, we'll touch on this more, is that bond all of us know, and we've inherited that culture of socialization. Under the mango tree, I'll come back to that. That was a big part of that era and continues to be so today. Oh, permanent. Okay, so it has to do with localization. Localization, by definition, suggests permanence. They're here, they're not going anywhere. Unfortunately, we lost those 4 greats, but only recently. They played, stuck with the sport, and helped build it over 35, 40 years. So the permanence it was very much a hallmark of that era, or actually started to be the hallmark of that era, which continues today. These guys were here to stay. And sustainability, stability is a huge part of our success. And then lastly, okay, what do I mean by, I couldn't find a better word. there weren't many players at the time. Again, we're still on one court, the second court didn't come in until 78. But we had luck in terms of Emmanuel and Carl, who would come and coach the juniors and all the players who kind of came over, Colin Brackett, Ian McDonald, others who came over, teaching them how to play. So we had to be very efficient in one court, one kind of guru who knew the game, and he taught like a god, which or translated theory into practice, which then spawned a whole new generation. So when you think about it, the number of people who play and how good they must have been, or efficient, or effective they've been over time to kind of get to where we are now, I think is an incredible accomplishment. Okay, moving on. Right, back to my mango tree. All of you guys know, up to today, that mango tree, it's got stories. It's probably the biggest institution in Guyana squash, in my opinion. If that mango tree could talk, we'd be a lot smarter for sure, and we'd make our job as historians a lot easier. Okay, these are the people for this era, and again, they're not complete. If we've missed anyone, please let me know. If your name is not here, I apologize. But this is a quick, short list of the people who came in that era. We love to put class years to this. Okay, and that's the list we have here. Okay, right. Okay, a couple other points to make on this era. This is by far the winningest duo of that era. We have Josephine right here. We also have Richard right here. They were just dominant in every sense, both at the national level as well as the regional level. So it was important for me to give them a shout out. And for the juniors, this is how Junior Casa started. This, 1981, that was the first team. And I'm happy to say four of them are here today. Remarkable achievement. And very cute pictures, of course. So, right. Okay. When I was in St. Vincent a couple years ago, I was lucky enough to stumble onto the Saracens. The Saracens were the family who kind of put together that first junior tournament. And I was able to find these in the record books, which I thought was just so exciting. Their original scorecards of the first matches that were played. Something I would love to have, but every match has ever been played at an official level in Guyana. Probably an impossible task, but again, this is an important part of the archive. Is Jojo here? No? Okay, that's Jojo McNeese right there. Okay, and then this is probably, you could ask Richard the cocktails. This, I think, is the second greatest match he's played because this effectively started his career as a junior. He won the under 14 at the time he was 11, I think. Phenomenal scoreline. He played against two Saros brothers. Just incredible result, and he's continued it ever since. Right, Canadian invasion. Third era. Ron Hughes comes into Guyana summer of 1982. Madhu Walenkar had left by this point, Godfrey had left. There was a little bit of a hole or vacuum in terms of coaching leadership, or just coaching direction. Ron comes in, professional coach, he just took it to a whole new level. First theme of that era, youth. The number of kids that came into the program, and many of them are here today, was phenomenal. I'm going to guess, because we don't have the numbers, increased by 4 or 5-fold. So the huge characteristic of that period was just the number of people brought to the junior program, and it was a formal junior program as well, which is the second point in some ways. The structure he put in, he would give you sheets, you had to write down how many forehand drives you did, times in a par. Everything was organized in a structured way that kind of helped a lot of the kids because we were didn't know what we were doing, in a very structured way, which eventually led to a lot of success. Right, what's this? Oh. It's hard to describe, now I'm 30 years on, how easy that era was. That was an era where Ron came from a developmental background, always giving back. That concept of service, collaboration, was very much instilled in all of us. There was no ego on those teams at all. And I was on those teams. So those teams went smooth and seamless, and anybody from that era or generation would attest to that. And lastly, internationalization. Before Ron showed up, we played squash at a local level and regional. All the Caribbean tournament I mentioned before, we never stepped foot outside of the Caribbean. He was the first guy who broke that glass ceiling of letting us go abroad with success. We had 3 tours to Canada. I was lucky enough to make 2 of them. Alright, these are, again, just a quick snapshot of the people who made those tours. Sorry, of the people who played in that era. Some more names. Again, if you don't see your name, please let me know. Or if you know other names, please let me know. So again, a quick snapshot of the players in that era. Excellent. Moving on, the 83 team, before, you saw the 81 team. The 81 team was 4 or 5 boys and Diane. We've now fast forward, Ron comes in 82, he built a full team, 83, we go to Barbados, we do okay. I was playing for like 9 months. I made that team, I couldn't even hit the ball. Okay, fast forward, 83, 84, that's the team, I think, and if Carl is here, I'd love to have a beer with him and talk about it. I think this is one of the greatest teams put together. 9 of the 10 players on this team made the semifinals or better. 9 of the 10. I tried to kind of look back to Carl's data, but I couldn't find no data to compare whether one of his teams did better. But anyway, this is something we could, love to have those sports discussions and arguments. Right. Okay, Carl Ince years. Carl's years, again, it's so big and it's contemporary because many of you have lived it. So again, you're much more relevant to describing it than me. So I'm not even going to attempt. But I do believe that to characterize Carl's years, I think 4 of the main points that come across is that the concept of continuity. He's been around for 24 years, in total 98 to 22. Officially retired in 22, although his presence is still felt. That continuity is a very important part of a successful program and where we are today. Next. Okay, strong administration, and this is an important point. I think is a powerful 1-2 punch. David has been here since the mid-2000s, and his strong leadership, in addition to a respected coach like Carl, really paved the way to success. They're a classic example of 1 + 1 = 3. And a special shout out to Juanita. I've really seen her up close the last couple of years, me coming back to junior sport. I think she's very much a silent partner in the back row, especially when I go on these tours, of doing all the little things that kind of make everything work together. So shout out to Juanita. I also think this era was characterized with better resources, as we were Guyana was kind of getting a little bit out of the economic doldrums it existed in, getting a little bit more sponsorship, the success of Nicolette, etc., led to more resources, both monetary as well as physical, number of courts. Carl he has 4 courts up on the highway. There were a couple of other courts that were built in that era. So we had not only capacity and players, but resources to kind of get these players to the next level. And lastly, success. Well, this is probably a product, but I still think this era is characterized by tremendous success, especially at the regional level. With there 12 years in a row we won Junior Casa, and of course, Carl's #1 protege, Nicolette. Right. And by the way, I didn't have people listed in Carl's era because there are way too many of you in this room. So I decided to fast forward all the time, in the interest of time. Okay, back to Maya. Where you came from and where you're going. Alright, we spoke about where we came from. Let's talk about where we're going. So, what lies ahead in the future? Alright, I don't know. The whole point about it is that it's not, that chapter is not yet written. Heidegger talks about fate and destiny, be able to affect your destiny, not your fate. So, that's something that all of you in here can affect. Everyone here has a part to play as we define what that future is, how we eventually get there, what we want, how we get there. Having said that, I'm going to take a stab at it, and what I see are trends as we move into the future. What lies ahead? One, I think increased capacity. That comes across all levels. I mean, look, the government has been very kind to us. We have 5 new courts. We have the capacity now. I think that will be a trend that continues. We're at an inflection point in the sport in a good way. The Olympics are coming in 28. I think that's going to be a huge boom to the sport. GOA, they've been a terrific partner to us in the past. I think they'll continue to put even more resources there. We do have some oil money. Those resources are going to find its way. QC has a squash club now. I'd love for the other schools to have it. This sport will grow with time. So, but we have the capacity now. We need to take advantage of it. And that means increased and mainstream participation. We have the course, we got to fill it. We got the plane, we got to put people in the seats. So, and I do believe we'll find a way to make this a bit more mainstream game. I just mentioned QC, Saints, Bishops, Nations, all the schools love to have them have clubs as well as courts as well as inter-school play. That will take this more mainstream, and I very much am confident that the administration and the sport as a whole will grow into a more mainstream game. Next. Oh, okay. Again, I was struggling for words to describe this one. What I mean by institutionalization is, as anything develops, grows, institutionalizes, there are certain characters or traits you typically tend to see. One of them is the outgrowth of that small little niche sport we have, camaraderie, sitting around a club. You can notice it already in terms of the coaching style that's happening. There's a lot of more specializations, individual coaching happening a little bit away from the group. The elite players being a little bit more focused and specializing in their craft. We have fitness coaches and all these other aspects of the game, which is a natural part of development, but it is becoming more institutionalized. As clubs, I think, sprout up, they're going to be independent and separate. The sport will become more institutionalized, which I think is a good thing, but there are challenges to manage as we face that growing pains in a way. And then lastly, regionalization. Our squash has grown from local and even Caribbean level to a more regional or pan-regional level, including LATAM. CASA, you may or may not know, Dominican Republic is going to be joining CASA, which is great. We are now going to a lot of the South American games, South American tournaments, etc. We're hosting Pan Am games in 2 years. All great things. I'm going to fly past this slide. I'm hitting straight to the summary because I think the summary just is a anti-reflection of the pitfalls I saw that are challenges that we potentially could face. What are the three main takeaways here? Alright, so I think that it goes without saying, it starts with the junior level, having players, it's in some ways a numbers game. The more players we have coming into the sport, the better chance that we have of having that mass appeal, and then of course getting future national, regional, and international champions. Second, it takes a village, and it comes across all sectors, both at the coaching level, and we've been very lucky. If you look back, we've been exceedingly lucky to have Madu and a Godfrey in the second phase. We have a Ron in the third, we have a Carl in the fourth. We're hoping a strong leader to step up in this era, to take it to the next level, to continue that tradition of excellent coaching, excellent and respected coaches. Hopefully, we'll have that. Secondly, administration. David's done a terrific job for the last 15 years plus, hopefully 6 years for another 15. And the board as well, amazing job they've done. They work very well together and they get stuff done. That needs to continue. And then thirdly, it actually takes a village. Not only those two, while those two are the linchpins, it's all the volunteers. Everyone in this room, their participation counts for a lot when the little pieces all add up. Network economics, right? You add one more person to the network, it exponentially increases the efficacy of that network. This is the mango tree point. If you really think about it, you see how important that social glue is, and the camaraderie which for some reason this sport has in space over so many other sports, and why it's been so effective in the country. And we can touch on this more. Again, all the time, I'll try to fly past it. My last one is a lot of, some of this is just dumb luck, which you can't replicate, train, or what's the word, plan for. If the Georgetown Club never allowed kids in, were we? If Ron Hughes never showed up, and by the way, there's a story behind Ron, who was supposed to go to Tanzania, last minute switch, he ends up here. We don't have Ron, Carl coming back. There's so many little things that happen that kind of dictate the outcomes or our success in life, and I think but it's one of those things though you just can't control. Mango tree, again, coming back to that theme, this is the third point I made, is the mango tree is essential. All the camaraderie, we've all had discussions, forged relationships under that mango tree. That is the social glue that holds us together. Under the mango tree, I don't know if you know this. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I thought it'd be a reference to the people in the audience who might know. Alright, we'll get there. Okay. I started with Newton. I'm going to end with the top though. Look, history is not sexy, right? When we started this was more mainstream in the program, and then we kind of pulled it back to where we are now, because it was felt that not a lot of people would be interested in it. 60 years of Guyana history. Personally, it's a little bit of a shame, and I think in some ways misguided. I believe firmly in my core that whether you're a country, a company, or even a sports association, we have a responsibility. Actually, more than a responsibility, we have a moral obligation for the preservation of history. If only to tell the stories of the people who came before us, to tell the stories of the past that they forged. And even if, especially for those who can, just make it a little bit easier for us to be here today, tonight. So look, I hope this presentation you found a little illuminating, if not enlightening. Our community, our squash community, is small, but it's tight knit. It's close. Our community spirit is young. We're only 60 years old, but it's resolute and it's resilient. It's alive. And I just hope that as we go forward, that spirit, that vibrant spirit that we have, that unyielding spirit that we have, is never allowed to walk in darkness. So, thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and if we have time for questions and answers, be happy to take them.
Roger, I got a question. So, I saw Dennis guys and I was thinking that if the folks that watched him and Ian McDonald, play that first marathon where they stand up, you would capture a picture there of that transitional era of that full-time event. So where we're going. So anybody who actually watched that great spot, right in the back, who actually watched that first marathon, is it standard? Who actually watched it? Oh my God. Oh my God, I did not know that. Wow, so both guys here. So who here in the room watched that marathon? Anybody here? So I watched it. So, all of you, it was great. That was great. Wow. We love seeing you. Wow. So look at that, right? Seeing coordination, because there's only like 4 or 5 people in this house standing up that were in there at that time. So I remember coming like 3 times because they played so long, and I was so young, I had to go home and put bags. So and they were still playing. So wow, that memory that actually happened this time. So now listen, do you remember the nickname we had to you? Right? What's the nickname? Anyone knows? I'm running on.
Okay, and we do have the unveiling, but any questions about the presentation, the accuracy? Please, if you have problems with it, you could write Diane Lee. She's head of customer complaints at GSAP. Any questions or so? No? Okay. Alright, we can go quickly into, this will probably take no more than 5 or 10 minutes. We want to unveil the national champions. There are only 2 people, I think, in the room that know who these champions are. It was a painstaking exercise for the last 3 years, so please bear with us. Sorry, I was going to end with Marjorie. How did I do?
Planted that. Happy to you. DJ. DJ, somebody come and
So actually it was, turn off. It was supposed to say 180 and I didn't realize it didn't like me that much, it went on so many times. Okay, alright. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Vicky, okay. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm gonna this will be short, so bear with me. Alright, it took us 3 years of painstaking work to try to, it was disappointing that we as an association or sport don't even know who our own national champions are and therefore our ability to honor them. So GSAP, again, and all thanks go to my 4 colleagues, did painstaking work over that period to try to get us to where we are now, and we can finally unveil them. We have 99% of the information now. And the people to thank outside of GSAP, I really wanted to recognize them, are the 4 individuals here. In particular, Kirsten, who did an absolutely incredible job. Kirsten, all 4, Robert, Renette, and Barbara. Turning pages in the archives one by one is not a lot of fun, but they did it, and they did it well, and we thank them. Right, moving on, the women's flat, which
Raja, go to the middle.
What?
Go to the middle, you just got me.
No, because I'm doing it both. They're not going to be able to read it. It's okay.
They can't hear you.
Oh, they can't hear me? Oh,
no.
All right. This is the unveiling of the women's national championship. You guys are probably not going to be able to read that, so I have it up on the projection screen. Now the question mark is 77. Everywhere we've read, we saw Josephine getting 6 national titles successively. We could not find a record of it in 77 to make it official.
So if anybody has any information to corroborate that, we'd like to give her 6 because we know it anecdotally. We just have not had the proof to get it. But the first set of women's national champions. Second set, again, incredible players, incredible numbers, and they all deserve a round of applause. Margie was supposed to help me. She's muted now, so okay, we move on. And then these are our last set of champions. A round of applause to all the women national champions of Guyana from 1978 to the present. One point to make on this, I always think of bookends in history. You can move, one bookend is always fixed, the first, and then of course the last one always keeps moving with time. And I can't tell you how proud that our first women's champion, Josephine, who's here today, that the standard and the mark she set will be discussed more tomorrow night, but we could not have been more proud to have someone like her as being one of the bookends of our women's history. And more on that tomorrow night when we honor her officially. Okay, the men's board, equally as impressive and equally as an impressive bookend. Men's championship board. I want to touch quickly on the first. As I referenced to Josephine, we could not ask for a better first ladies champion to mark the left bookend of our history. The first men's champion is a guy called Mike James. I never heard of him. I need to spend 30 seconds talking about Mike James. Julian had the pleasure to meet him. We had to track him down, go through all the records. We found him. He's alive and well in the UK. He was Deputy High Commissioner of the British Embassy back at that time. He comes to Guyana. He was an unbeaten player for the entire time he was here. Cambridge graduate, 3-time blue. He played squash because he was an extremely all-round sportsman. His first love was cricket. Second love was squash. The reason he became such a good squash player is because he happened to be rooming with the British national champion in the UK at the time, so he learned from him. They became very good friends. He became a great squash player. But his first love was cricket. I had the privilege, absolute privilege of talking to this gentleman. The stories he has told are phenomenal. He, as a cricketer, he came to this country and he played for GCC. On his team, Rohan Kanhai, Alvin Kalik-Sharan, Basil Butcher, Joe Solomon, Clyde Butts. Phenomenal, just legends of our sport in the cricket space. He told me it was just a privilege to be on that team. And his memories of Guyana were just so fond and nostalgic. Last point with him, on the squash side, he was unbeaten while he was here. And he had an incredible career, well, not only here, but even after he left and he went back to the UK. He wrote a book called Diplomatic Moves. If anybody's interested, that's a shout out to his book. But could not be more proud of having him as a national champion and such a class act. A class gentleman. The other winners, Madhu in the early years, Madhu Manikar, Indira's dad, featured here. He's also honorary tomorrow night. You'll hear more about him. These are the early winners in the early days. Mike Watkinson, I need to shout out to him too because he won the Viking Cup, which I referenced before. This was what they call a lean trophy. If you win it 3 times in a row, you get to keep it. He won it 3 times, he got to keep it. And then we had to get another trophy to continue with. Richard Lee, who's currently here, won the next trophy. But Mike was very gracious to give this back to the association. I think David will decide whether we put this in our little museum or whether we use this as the National Championship Cup going forward, and then we can put bands of other champions on it. Next set of champions. There you go. A shout out to Garfield Wilshire, the most accomplished men's squash player in the history of our sport with 10 national titles. Garfield. He's here? Okay, great. And then last set, more contemporary, you probably know this list. Oh, sorry. Margin muted, sorry for that. There you go. Alex Arjun, next highest, 8 national champions. Good job, Alex. And then, I think that's it. I think we're short on time, right, David? So, Any questions, comments? Happy to take, but I don't want to stand between you and the bar. So.
I'd like you to go back to the women's champion. Just ask people in the room who are national champions to stand up so we can bridge the gap between the early years and the current years. That would be a good thing to see.
Yes.
To the front, please. The women who won, national champions. Could you come to the front, please? Let's take a picture. Quick. Come. Just the women first. You need to call Nicolette. Nicolette is somewhere too.
You got the same size.
Nicolette coming. No, wait till Nicolette.
They're 10. 1, 2, 3.
There's all in here. Kaki not here. Oh, Kaki here.
Just to let you guys know, this is actually quite historic. There were only 10 women national champions in the history of our sport, and we have 9 of them here tonight. Can we ask the men, please, last order of business for tonight, can we ask all men national champions to step forward? There are 22 in the history of the sport. I don't know how many are present tonight. All men national champions, can you please step forward?
All right, here. Let me do this thing quick. Here. Roger. Let me do this quick.
With the chin.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sorry?
You could use the mic now.
Everyone, 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Everyone, 10 seconds before I release you to the bar and the food. Thank you very much for joining tonight. I hope this was at the very worst
Everyone, can I have your attention for 10 seconds, please? I just want to conclude this part of the beginning of the weekend. This is the end of the beginning. But thank you for enduring this history lesson. Again, I hope it was informative at the very worst. I look forward to spending the rest of the weekend with you. The bar is open, cocktails are being served. Please enjoy and look forward to meeting all of you here tonight. Have a good evening.